We need to be prepared to stop doing old things in poker, folding a hand, in order for new things to start. Because actually, when you start talking about resource allocation, what you really have to appreciate is that all resource allocation is reallocation. Quitting should not be taboo. It's a good positive thing.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. And today we're talking about how to make smart choices under pressure, take calculated risks, and spark new ideas in daily life with our guest, Caspar Berry. Caspar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Seth. It's lovely to be here.
Well, we're really pleased to have you here, and let's get it started. I just want to say to our audience, thank you as well for joining us. Caspar, we're going to get right into the heart of the matter here. You know, you have had a diverse career. You've been an actor, you've been an entrepreneur. How has that shaped your thinking about risk, and what can event professionals draw from those learnings?
So I think one of the things that I did, Seth, as you said, it was a varied career. Irrespective of what I did, the actual things that I did, I changed things, right? And I was willing to change and stop doing something in order to start doing something else. Because very often that stopping doing something is the difficult part, right? How many times have we all been to a meeting and we've got a to-do list as long as our arm, loads of new things to do, but no one's actually cleared space in terms of, you know, our time and our energy and our money to fund these new things. So here's the thing. I talk about risk-taking, yes, but also what sits underneath that is decision-making, right? And decision-making is resource allocation under uncertainty. That's the definition of a decision, according to Harvard Business School. And that's what a poker player is doing, right? They're allocating scarce resources under uncertainty. And sometimes we're doing that every 5 minutes, and sometimes we're doing that every 2, 3, 4 years in the scope of our lives, right? And so one of the things that I would take from my life and answer that question with is that we need to be prepared to stop doing old things in poker, folding a hand, in order for new things to start. Because actually, when you start talking about resource allocation, what you really have to appreciate is that all resource allocation is reallocation. And for something new to start, something old to stop. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about agility and all of those kind of things in the VUCA environment. So be prepared to do something which has been a bit taboo, I think, until recently. And I think there has been a sea change recently, which is stop doing certain things in your life. Quitting should not be taboo. It's a good positive thing.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and in other regions of the world, maybe in California, they might phrase it as "let it go," or lose the attachment. You know, or lose the attachment. But either way, the principle is the same. You know, let's talk about that a little bit. There's where we get attached to. You say you go to these events, you go to a meeting, you get inspired, you get moved, you have a long laundry list as long as your arm of new actions, new activities, things that move you, that you really believe are going to make a difference. And then you don't because you're holding on to or you're attached to the past. And that's where the rubber hits the road as far as you go, right? Because you can't have a new space or new energy or allocate resources that are limited if you're still pointing them towards what you're holding on to.
Yeah.
I think I said what you said, just in different words.
Better.
No, I don't know about that.
Well, listen,
I don't have the accent.
What you did say is great, is that concept of detachment, right? You're right. That would be the California way. And I just think it's interesting that some ideas have their time. Like, so as you say, I'm British. And the British psyche still owes a lot to Winston Churchill, right? And this kind of gritty, determined, stiff upper lip attitude. And Churchill's
just get on with it.
Get on with it, do it, right? You know, never give up, which is brilliant advice if the Nazis are at Dover, okay? But it's not great advice if the never giving up one thing means that you are just going to do that instead of all of the new and interesting things that life and your business and what have you offers, right? So it's really integral to the idea of risk-taking and change that it's going to involve doing something new And very often the impediment to that is that we just want to keep doing all of the things that we've done in the past. I'll just give it a business example of this, because I think it's really relevant. Google have created $2 trillion worth of wealth, right, in 25 years. And in doing that, they have, this is quite an old statistic, but at the time, about 57 different brands that they've curtailed, right? Buzz, Wave, Reader, Glass, etc.
Yes.
And every time we do it, the tech press goes, they've lost it. They're not with it at the moment. But Google understands something really important, which is that the definition of an entrepreneur, as coined by the French economist Jean-Baptiste Say, is one who reallocates resources from areas of lower to areas of higher return. And part of that process is folding the old hand. So this is not, by the way, this is not what I've spent most of my time talking about for 20 years, but I think it's interesting that an idea has come of its time, and a lot of people are thinking along the same lines in the last sort of 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you were in acting, you went to entrepreneurship, you referenced your poker playing. All of those take certain risks. I mean, entrepreneurs bet on themselves. I mean, that to me, I'm an entrepreneur, but I didn't wake up and say I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I looked at the landscape. I had the results I had at university, and it just kind of made sense to me to go in the direction I did, as opposed to another one which was not entrepreneurial. Let's talk a little bit about your poker playing. It's kind of sexy. People love to talk about it, and James Bond and Casino Royale, or when Texas Hold'em became big, the World Series of Poker. There's a lot of charge around it. But what are like some of the fundamental aspects, characteristics of it that not just for our meeting planner listeners, but for others who that could serve them, that you could frame up and kind of just give us some virtues there that make sense to be able to glom onto and use in our lives?
Sure. So as you know, I was
long-winded question. Sorry.
No, it's good. I'll give you a long-winded answer then. I was the poker advisor at Casino Royale, so I can testify firsthand that is not what the world of professional poker is like. Nothing like that. There are still some people in England, at least, who think that in Vegas everyone wears black tie. Right.
Right.
So, and poker is full of that. Like almost every expectation that people have from outside of the game. And I've been doing this job for 20 years, right? I've done 3,000 gigs. So I've seen a lot of people's hands go in the air for their expectations. It's not like that. It's less about bluffing. It's less about reading body language. It's less about taking the big risk than it is about being patient, resilient, and disciplined. Okay.
So hold on a minute, because I think we should spotlight that for our listeners, right?
Yep.
Patience.
Yep.
Say that again. Patience, resilience,
and discipline. So discipline,
because if you juxtapose those three ideas, I'm sure there's more than that, right? In today's connected, but everybody's disconnected, fast pace, attention span of a goldfish. Stop the scroll, don't stop the scroll world. Patience, resilience, and consistency.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a contrarian way to be.
Yeah, and listen, we've mentioned Buddha, right? So let's go back to him. Detachment.
Yeah.
Poker is a very Zen activity. I mean, I sat in the Mirage Hotel Casino in the early 2000s, passing chips across a green bays for 12 hours a day. It's incredible.
Right.
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 When you're in the space, you are relying very much on your intuition. I mean, there's an enormous amount of maths and data that goes into it. But actually, when we talk about the phrase the calculated risk, it's fundamental to poker. Part of that calculated risk is a probability assessment, and that is what we call judgment. And the more that you can rely on your kinesthetic, your intuitive senses to formulate a probability assessment, which we're doing all the time. We say, I trust this person.
All the time.
All the time. The more that you can do that on a poker table, and I would argue in business and life, like you say, entrepreneurs very often are intuitive. Increasingly, they're using data, but my sessions try and see both of those things. So patience, resilience, discipline. Discipline is the discipline to fold. Resilient is the resilience to take risks, do things that won't always succeed, but they were still the right thing to do. It's just that on this occasion, the heart didn't come. It's just that on this occasion, the experiment didn't work. It's just that on this occasion, they didn't buy. Let's learn from it, but that doesn't mean we're doing the wrong thing. And patience is an interesting one that hasn't really had its day, I don't think, as an idea. But in poker, you've got to wait for the right time and opportunity.
Right.
It's not about forcing it through because you don't like this guy or you think you're due. You've just got to wait for the planets to align.
I love that patience hasn't had its day. Well, on this podcast, it will.
Right.
I will make certain of that. For our listeners, if you love this kind of content, I'm fascinated. I'm really plugged in here, and I have some follow-up questions. Like us, subscribe, share it with your neighbors, your friends, your postman, your butcher, your barber, everybody and anybody, because this is really great stuff. Also, comment. Have you played poker? Have you been to the big casinos? Have you watched Casino Royale? Do you think Caspar should have come to this podcast dressed in a tuxedo? I mean, we want to hear from you. But there's two areas I want to go. I'm going to bookmark artificial intelligence, but I want to ask you about the Zen aspect, right? And this being present, because it's just a great kind of context, a great image, if you will. We talk about reading the room and being patient and making these constant judgments, which I want to connect to AI in a moment here. You don't always win. They say the house wins. But when you lose, is there a way that you frame it sometimes where I lost the right way and it's still in that consistent over time, long term, still moving you in the direction that you wanted to go?
That's everything. I'm going to make one pedantic point, but it's important, right? Because if someone's
that's why we're here. That's why we're here.
Exactly. So if someone's out there thinking about booking a poker player, there might be certain taboos around poker which they have in their mind. I totally understand that, but it's very important. A professional poker player is not gambling by the strict definition of that word. Okay, look, I've enjoyed gambling in my life. I don't happen to do it anymore, but as a leisure activity, as long as you're losing what you could afford to lose or what you would lose in a golf club or an auction room, it's perfectly acceptable. Okay. But crucially, when we are gambling, blackjack, roulette, craps, big wheel, all of those things, we're playing against the house. And as you just said, the house is going to win at the end of the day, in the long run. You can win on any given spin of the wheel or turn of the card, but the house is going to take it down in the end. And actually, what most sessions try and do is get under the surface of that and show how. I mean, like literally mathematically, because they're not getting lucky and they're not cheating. The game is set up in such a way, and this is the key, Seth, they have the edge. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's a key term in business. So I studied economics at Cambridge, and I knew from the first time I ever sat down and played poker in the summer of 99, I was like, this poker table is a market within which we, the players who are playing against each other, we are not playing against the house. The house makes money in a slightly different way, right? And it varies, so I won't go into it. But they don't care whether you win or lose because you're not winning it from them. Okay,
right.
You're winning it from or losing it to the other players around the table. So we are like any other market, like a housing market, like a jobs market, like the insurance market, like a stock market, right? And what we are all trying to do is what the house does in the rest of the casino, which is get the edge. All right, that's the absolutely fundamental thing. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. You can have more information than the other people. You can be better at certain skills, patience, resilience, discipline. These days, mathematics, obviously. But you can also have better judgment, right? And poker's actually moved from a place, if you take it from the 70s, 80s, where those guys, some of them were inured, right? But they had great gut, okay? So when they felt that it was likely that you were bluffing, their judgment was good, right? These days, in fact, if you take the last 7 or 8 years, you have to be good at both. But there was a period between about 2002 and 2015, 16, where maths overtook judgment, right? Where the ability to formulate the calculations, to do the calculation behind the calculated risk, that was what made you a great poker player. Now, all markets tend toward efficiency. What does that mean? It just means people get better. Edges are much faster. Competition is greater. And so now you're really good at both of those things. All right. Yeah. And that's why the great poker players, they've played 10 million hands online. They've seen all those situations. And this is the answer to your question. Judgment is pattern recognition. And that's what AI is, right? It's the discerning of correlations. So what is judgment? I'm at an unknown situation here. Someone's typing something into the AI box, right? And what I'm going to do is go through past experiences and pick out the ones that best correlate to this experience. Now, they won't tell me the right answer, but they will give me the ability to best assess what is most likely to be the right answer, like what is most likely to be the next word in this sentence, which is large language models. So it's all the same thing, actually. We're all using our judgment based on the data of experience to try and best predict the future, with one final caveat, Seth: we're still going to be really bad at it, right? And part of what I teach is that to be a good decision maker, you need to embrace failure.
Right. And artificial intelligence, ubiquitous, said more in a pedestrian way for us North Americans. It's everywhere. It's predictive. It's prognosticating. It's trying to determine what the next move, the next steps are. But here's where I want your take on this comment, observation, question. The human still needs to still is the one that needs to act, still needs to choose. In my very pedestrian way, I'm like, okay, I'm an elite alpinist. I'm on Everest. I'm on Camp 1, 2, 3, wherever I am. I'm with a Sherpa who is kind of like a human ChatGPT. They have a body of work that can help with the calculation. We have some smartphones and some apparati that can determine altitude, wind, the forecast, et cetera, et cetera. You can populate all that information. You can have determined, what's highly likely. But at the end of the day, you still need to make the choice.
You're absolutely right. And I think the key word there is responsibility, isn't it? I mean, I think we're at a place now where, there are a lot of AI programs, bodies, agents,
bots.
That can better assess, an X-ray for cancer than a good doctor, right? But it can't take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
We still need a doctor to take responsibility, because otherwise the responsibility is ours, and we need someone to lean on in those moments of decision. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that humans will be crucial for decisions, even though a lot of the analysis, increasing amount, is going to be done by AI. However, I think that, to choose my world, for example, and I think the world of finance as an adjunct to that, AI will kill online poker, really, because, they've always been bots, right? And bots are, some of them are good, some of them are bad. They've got to be programmed well, right? But if AI can get to a place where it's making near perfect decisions, and also, what is the other thing about AI? It's scalable for, a very small amount of money. I just don't see the market for poker online in exactly the same way, by the way, as from the very early days, there was a program called Snowy, which was able to make the perfect decision for the game of backgammon. And think of backgammon for a moment as like poker with the cards up, right? So there was no unknown. Well, Snowy was just able to Monte Carlo analyze the situation and go, well, that's the play. And that's why backgammon never took off online, because if your play too closely approximated to Snowy, you were deemed to be cheating and you were thrown off, right? So where do we go from there? The online world of poker online poker world is tiny. How do we, if we start to scale that up to, the world stock markets and finance and investing and all the rest of it, where do we go? That's beyond my pay grade. I think really the point is all markets will tend to get more and more efficiency. And I think it comes back to what we said there before, which is the job will be taking a responsibility for the decision.
Yeah, which that's a whole separate podcast.
It is.
Let's turn the corner. Let's turn the corner on that point, and just I want to ask you on a personal, professional level, what is it right now that you're working on that most excites you?
Part of it is coming back to that idea before about quitting. Because, as I said, that's something that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, and I think
in poker terms we call it folding, right?
Folding, right. Yeah, exactly. And there's another speaker in America who's doing exactly the same thing. Our ideas kind of coincided, so that's exciting for me. Listen, I think what's always excited me, right, is I exist in a market of other speakers that talk about taking risks. Okay, what I try and do is demonstrate mathematically why risk is a good thing. Make that fun, right? Because poker makes it fun. If we were just doing the maths, a lot of people would turn off pretty quickly. But poker makes it fun and sexy and exciting. Come into the world of poker and then understand why risk is a positive thing that increases one's returns on investment. All right. Therefore, it's essential for business that this thing called decision making has actual skills that you can learn. People know more of them now than they did in 2004 when I started, but there's still a skills gap. And in a relatively short space of time, you can open people's eyes and educate them. You know what? The answer to your question is, I've been doing this job for 21 years. And I'm actually genuinely startled every time I get on the stage by how I'm still so passionate about teaching that lesson.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Explaining how it works. It still gives me a buzz every time.
Well, I don't want to turn this into, a Freudian couch here, but there must be some core virtue in there that has been a through line that maybe because of age, time lapse around the track, metaphorically, that is just crystallized into what it is that was the impetus and that you knew was there. Maybe you're more in touch with it and it's just more of a potent source at this point that you can identify with, but that you can see not only the difference it's made for you, but that it can make for others. And that's what keeps that spark alive.
It's a really interesting thing that you say there. Okay, two things. So first of all, I don't have kids, right? I don't have kids. And I think there's a nurturing urge, right, that we all have. And my outlet for that has always been speaking and training, right? Like I get a real buzz from giving people that aha moment. I'm doing a speech next week, and this is a one-off, right? First time, 21 years. I'm speaking to a school. And it's been set up because there's a lot of people who know each other, who know me, and so there's a lot of trust there. You wouldn't normally have
happens that way a lot. It happens that way a lot, especially after 21 years.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if you're speaking to people under 18, you wouldn't normally use the metaphor of poker, right? But everyone's happy because they know what I'm going to do is responsible and it's on message. It's actually anti-gambling, right? Once you've drawn that distinction, I'm like, take the gamble out of your lives, right? Understand what gambling is, understand what calculated risk-taking is, and be above the break-even line. And I just think that I started off, I wanted to be a film director. Like you said, I done a lot of different things when I was young. And I wrote feature films, I worked for Miramax, worked for Disney, all of that kind of thing. The problem with the feature film industry is that to give people those aha moments, right? Those epiphanies in the dark, like I had when I watched E.T. and Goodfellas, you know what? You have to fight every single day. Because broadly speaking, the people who are paying you don't really want the same things as you want to create. They kind of do, and they should do, because it will make money in the end, but they don't know what that is, right?
Yeah.
The thing I love about speaking is that the people who employ me openly and overtly want exactly what I want to do, right? Which is give people sitting in the dark that moment where everything just sort of clicks into place for a bit. You know, the epiphany, the aha, that's the thrill.
And I always say it's one thing. It doesn't have to be 7 steps or whatever. It could be, but it's that one thing. And maybe they heard it, Caspar, the year before, the decade before, in a different country, in a different language, but where they are and where you are, it connected, and then you can make that difference. And you're not children have been impacted, and the ripple effect has been pretty amazing. That's pretty cool. Well, with this body of work and this, I'm going to call it a calling, pardon the pun, that you have, I just want to address leadership. You've talked about leaders. They have to stay positive. They have to trust others, and they really have to stick to their beliefs. Bringing it back to, our viewers and our listeners, how can our podcast listeners that dial in for rich content, how can they use those traits of positivity, trust, and sticking to their beliefs to build stronger teams, especially in high stress environments, for example, like large meetings, the event industry?
So I'm gonna come back in quite an original way, right? Because very few people challenge the word positivity, all right, when it comes to team building and all the rest of it. And I'm going to challenge it slightly. So I'm a big fan of, this is not my idea, obviously, Jim Collins's Stockdale paradox, I believe it's called. That idea that it's better to be optimistic about the future, positive about where we want to get to, but realistic about where we are now. It's 5 years, I think, to the day, as we record this, since Britain left the European Union, since Brexit. And at that time, I don't want to get political, but we had a leader in Boris Johnson who wanted to be Churchill, right? And was very sort of like tub-thumpingly positive about everything without necessarily being realistic about the size of the challenge and the potential downsides. And it's left Britain, we are down on the deal as a result of it. Okay. Now, again, positivity is really great once you've committed, once you're going to go for something, once you've made that decision. Let's all pull in the same direction in our attempt to get there. But actually, great decision making involves being realistic about our chances. It involves making realistic assessments about likelihoods and probabilities. It involves extricating ourselves from what we want to happen to what we think is likely to happen. Again, this is at the moment of decision. And I think that sometimes we lose sight of that in a world that's always trying to be unremittingly positive. And that can sometimes lead to bad decision making, right, as a result.
Yeah.
So I think everything has its place. Realism, definitely bravery, courage, fostering psychological safety, an environment in which people can not only profit and say, but do things that won't necessarily always succeed, but which, as you've made allusion to, and let's just be explicit about it, the upside, when they happen, is so great that it more than pays for the investments and the things that didn't work. That's the right. Essence of the calculated risk. But yeah, I think that combining that with realism and great judgment, I think, is a really important component part of leadership.
Yeah. It might be top of mind because lately I was at a couple of events recently with some sociologists, but I'm a Gen Xer, at least here in North America, and positivity, but grounded in reality with maybe an infinitesimal dose of like healthy cynicism is just, you're preaching to the preacher.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where, I'm sort of using a little sprinkling here of language that I bring into my speeches, right? That's where good probability assessments come from. Okay. And the reason why I keep using that phrase is because central to all of my work, the way that I start off my speeches is having some good jokes about the nature of uncertainty, right? And about how unpredictable the world is. And so if you're talking to someone, I started doing this job when that was regarded as a weird thing to talk about.
Right.
For 2008, a lot of my audiences would be like, why are we talking about, uncertainty? Like, we just turn the handle and the widget comes out, right? And then post-financial crisis, post-COVID, it's now VUCA, agility, it's now the word that everyone wants to talk about. But I was doing it when it was deeply unfashionable. So the essence to uncertainty and the essence to being a great decision maker, and I think a great leader, is embracing that uncertainty, right? It's not about pretending that we can overcome it, okay? Because we can't. We really do not know what the world is going to look like in 5 years, especially as you say with AI. But neither does a poker player. We do not know what the next card is going to be. And in fact, the greatest poker player who's ever played the game doesn't know what the next card is going to be. So that is not the skill set of a poker. The skill set of a poker player is embracing that uncertainty, accepting it, and using the language of probability and calculated risk to still make great resource allocation decisions despite that.
And that's any realm, any domain, any terrain, any field of play in life. I know you don't have children, but you're a smart person. When my kids come home from school and the door opens up, it is pure uncertainty. It could be the whole range from joy to not joy. And I'm not developing my skills at the poker table and that green felt, but boy, I could use those concepts, Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Like, again, when I started off doing this, people were genuinely really resistant to it. And I used to talk about things like that, not that exact example, but, just to try and make them aware of the uncertainty in their lives. And it did take, the world's finances collapsing twice. To really bring that home to people. But actually, we deal with it every single day. Relationships, children, relatives, our finances. All of these
community,
things politics, they're in constant flux, technology. And listen, it is difficult because it's, broadly speaking, not what this machine was built to do, right? Broadly speaking, this machine has evolved or was given to us at a time when morning was going to look like evening and the next 5 years are going to be pretty much the same as the last 5 years. because
Pretty much.
it's an interconnected society. It's a smaller, simple, less complex society, etc. So what we're asking people and ourselves to do every day is actually quite unnatural, right? But we can put that set of clothes on. We can wear that suit and adopt those new skills to deal with it.
Sometimes we need a suit of armor.
Yeah. I think that's what it looks like. It's a suit of armor.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, listen, Caspar, I think we've come to the end of the deck, if you will. We have no more cards to play for the moment. For the moment, we can shuffle again and have you back. I just want to appreciate you for taking the time, sharing your wisdom, your experiences with us. And, I know our audience is smarter for it. I just want to thank everybody else for tuning in. Look, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, help us spread the word so more people can enjoy these incredible conversations. This truly is, it's a treasure to have somebody like Caspar Berry impart their learnings to us on our podcast. I hope our episode has sparked new ideas to make events better, anywhere in your life, personal or professional, better. So let's keep pushing and raising the bar for events, and no matter what, make an impact on people's lives. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Caspar.
My pleasure. Thank you.